Do you want your script to be action driven or character driven? What are they and what's the difference? Today we find that out in episode 3 of Think Like a Writer. Hello everyone, my name is James Martin. Welcome back to my new series called Think Like a Writer. Today we're going to talk about the difference between action-driven and character-driven stories. So, first off, what's the difference between action-driven and character-driven? First off, what is action-driven? Action-driven is when circumstances happen naturally in the story. So let's say an earthquake happens, right? That's not a character-driven event, or at least it could be, but if an earthquake is happening as a natural disaster, that's action-driven, and that's going to force your characters to do something. Or maybe other people moving your protagonist or your antagonist, right? So action is happening towards your characters to make them do something, right? Or you also have character-driven. Character-driven is when the character moves the story, okay? So when a character does A, B, and C, that's developing the story. Everything follows along them. Everything that happens is because of your character. Or whatever happens, whatever the circumstances are, is happening because of your characters. So if you want to decide between whether or not you want to have an action-driven story or a character-driven story, or maybe a mixture of both, how can we figure out what is the best way to implement these action-driven and character-driven moments? So when you have an action-driven story, the best way to figure out how it's going to affect your story is to create a bit of a timeline. So what are these moments, what are these events and circumstances that are about to happen? If your story is leading up to, as I gave an example about an earthquake, the idea is that you're going to have certain moments that are going to start building up and then eventually the big earthquake happens, right? Or if certain things have to happen, you have to figure out where those beats take place, right? When you're figuring out the generic scenes of your story, this moment's going to take place here, this moment's going to take place here, this moment's going to take place there. That way you can figure out what your character story is and make those happen in between. So that's how you figure out about an action-driven story. Now what about character-driven? And I've heard this from other writers, is what they like to do is they like to develop the character first and have the character kind of guide you where you want them to be, right? So as remember, when we're writing our characters, that it's all about decisions, which comes from, a background, from circumstances, from their culture. So what does the character want to do at this given time? So there's the first step, and then the next step, and the third, and the fourth, etc., etc., etc. So let the characters kind of guide you, okay? The other part is, as we mentioned before, what is their mission? What is their end goal? So what do they want to do? How do they plan on going out to accomplish this said goal or this mission? And then as a final tip I want to share with you guys is, remember, there's action and reaction. Whatever happens, there's usually a reaction. If a character does something with another character, that character's going to react in some way. If there's a circumstance, like an action, your characters are going to react very, very differently. Or when you have an action that happens, a character's going to react in a certain way. So as you're figuring out what you want to do with action or your characters, just kind of figure out where you want the story to go and how you want everything to kind of play out and what's the most important part. Do you need your characters to control the story, or is it the actions and the circumstances that control the story and who comes out on the top? Okay? So I hope this helped you guys. I wish you the best of luck with writing your scripts, and make sure you join us for another episode of Think Like a Writer.